Horizon Zero Dawn is apparently getting a remake or remaster, some kind of upgrade treatment that is going to be released as a separate product. And I kind of want to talk about this one because with all of the discussion surrounding The Last of Us Part 1, the remake of The Last of Us, and whether that was a necessary remake, and whether this is a model that Sony should continue to follow with certain IPs and with certain titles that aren't really all that old. You know, the discussion has cropped up once again surrounding Horizon Zero Dawn. So rumors first began when Multiplayer First published their report on this whole situation, as highlighted here by Wario64. Rumor Horizon Zero Dawn Remaster/Remake and multiplayer game are in development, and further details can be found clicking on the link. In addition, Video Games Chronicle released their own article corroborating this information. Let's dive into the Multiplayer First article and see what the details are surrounding this alleged upcoming release so far. So this article was published on October 2nd, 2022. The headline reads, Report Horizon Zero Dawn Remake or Remaster in the works for PlayStation 5 and Horizon multiplayer game in development. Scrolling down, you'll find an anecdote here that I think is representative of certain sentiments around the internet. If you thought The Last of Us Part 1 divided players up on whether or not a game needed a remake, prepare yourselves. Our source didn't elaborate whether or not this was a built from the ground up style of remake. However, we were told that the remake features an improved lighting system, ambient occlusion and such, overhauled textures, and better animations, with new character models to match those found in the sequel, Horizon Forbidden West. And scrolling down, you'll find this image that Multiplayer First embedded, showing the differences between Zero Dawn's graphics and Forbidden West's graphics. You can see right here close-ups of Aloy herself, her face, her eyes, her hair, you name it, all the micro details. And yeah, look, obviously from a pure fidelity standpoint, Forbidden West does look noticeably better than Zero Dawn, but is it by a significant enough amount that it justifies a remake or a remaster for Zero Dawn? The thing about The Last of Us, at the very least, that game was, almost a decade old before Part 1 came out. While I wouldn't have placed that as my top priority for PlayStation games or IPs that need to be remade, it could kind of get away with it if it wasn't for the fact that it was $70 and excluded the multiplayer factions mode along the way. You know, there was a way they could have made it work. Horizon Zero Dawn, though, keep in mind that game came out in 2017. It's only 5 years old, just a little over 5 years old, and already they're trying to come up with a remaster or remake that it's its own standalone release. I don't think this should be anywhere close to a priority right now. Generally, Zero Dawn looks pretty damn good and still plays pretty modernly, and while enhancements of Forbidden West making their way to Zero Dawn would be cool, there are just so many other IPs that are waiting to be kind of woken up from hibernation, and specific entries in those IPs to be remade, because those are just older games that could benefit far more greatly from a remake treatment than Horizon Zero Dawn, which no doubt the remaster or the remake will end up looking better and probably on some level playing better as well, but you know, it's just that's not one that I'm really all that thrilled about. I'm genuinely surprised that there is some kind of Zero Dawn remaster remake in the works. According to Multiplayer First, we were told there is a big focus on bringing the accessibility options that the sequel introduced. Different graphic modes will also be available. For gameplay changes themselves, there are some subtle improvements, mostly those being the quality of life improvements the sequel brought. It wasn't confirmed whether or not we would see flyable mounts or a glider, which were introduced in Forbidden West, so we suppose that is unlikely given to their story-related importance in the sequel. Not to mention that if you look at The Last of Us Part 1, they didn't add things like prone and things like melee dodging that were in Last of Us Part 2, which I thought was a missed opportunity for Part 1, especially where melee dodging is concerned. So I imagine that there are certain aspects of game design that, just wouldn't lend itself to them introducing elements of the sequel. Horizon Forbidden West was built with the glider and the flying mount in mind, whereas the original Horizon Zero Dawn wasn't, so there may be complications there. I don't imagine those are features that are going to make it into this remaster or remake. Though I imagine things like combat, mobility, and moment-to-moment gameplay in general will be tweaked to just feel a little better, a little closer to Forbidden West, kind of like how Last of Us Part 1 feels closer to The Last of Us Part 2 in terms of moment-to-moment gameplay and overall feel. And look, these enhancements are obviously all positives for Horizon Zero Dawn, but the fear is that Sony will pull what they pulled with Last of Us Part 1 and sell this remake that is essentially beat for beat the same game, save for those enhancements that are nice but aren't worth repurchasing the game that we've already played at full price. The fear is that Sony will sell the Zero Dawn remake at $70 and that they'll offer no upgrade path, much like with The Last of Us Part 1. And one more way that The Last of Us could kind of skirt away with a remake, aside from the fact that it was almost a decade old, is the fact that it was never released on PC. It really never got a full-fledged patch that takes advantage of, PS5's power or whatever. Whereas Horizon Zero Dawn, not only did it recently see a PC port, it also had a patch applied for the PlayStation 4 release that allowed the PS5 to run it at an unlocked but stable 60 FPS with 2160p checkboarding resolution. That's all the remaster I feel this game needs. We already have a modern patch for the game that isn't a complete graphical overhaul per se, but does bring it up to snuff enough that you really don't need to remake Horizon Zero Dawn. There are plenty of modern options out there already, so I imagine that if The Last of Us getting a remake was controversial, then Zero Dawn is going to make even less sense. But yeah, this article also mentions the PC port, which comes with PC-specific improvements like draw distance, higher frame rates, widescreen support, and more. And with the game being 5 years old, I don't feel like it needs much more than that at this stage. It feels like all the money and resources being poured into this Zero Dawn remake or remaster that's currently not official. It's currently rumors, but the rumors are lining up. Those resources and the manpower and the money could have gone to other more desired remake or remaster projects. Now, while Sony has yet to comment on any of this, and while we don't know for sure Sony's justification for why they feel like they should fund a Horizon Zero Dawn remake, they're likely trying to tie in the release of this Horizon Zero Dawn remaster or remake into the release of the Horizon TV show that's being worked on. Benji Sales kind of put this aptly. I have zero idea if this is true, but assuming it is, the thought process behind a Horizon Zero Dawn remake is likely due to the Netflix series coming and Sony wanting to synergize if the show is big. I don't know that it's needed, though. A co-op Horizon experience, however, makes a ton of sense, which I do agree with, and I also agree with the fact that much like how Sony released The Last of Us Part 1 remake sort of close to HBO's release of the Last of Us HBO show so that those two could potentially synergize, Sony's trying to leverage a similar synergy by re-releasing Horizon Zero Dawn close to the release date of the Netflix Horizon show so that those two could potentially synergize and boost each other's sales or viewership and whatnot, much like how with CD Projekt Red, the way the Witcher Netflix show boosted Witcher 3 sales and concurrent player numbers significantly during that period, and in the same way that the Cyberpunk Edge Runners anime significantly boosted and revitalized the player numbers of Cyberpunk 2077 while generating tons of new sales for that title. Given that this has worked in the past, Sony's likely trying to get in on this strategy and seeing if it works. But the only way this can work is if the show is so good that it makes people miss the world and want to dive into the game. But even with that strategy in mind, I find the Horizon Zero Dawn remake to be unnecessary, given that The Witcher 3 didn't have to release a remake for its concurrent player numbers and for its sales to be boosted by The Witcher show. And with Cyberpunk 2077, all they had to do was fix the game and then release the anime, and that garnered positive sentiment surrounding the game and boosted everything across the board. But there was no remaking or re-releasing involved. involved. Now, one project that I'm more on board for is the idea of a Horizon online multiplayer game for both the PS5 and PC. That would actually be a brand new project, something that we haven't experienced before. And yeah, I can imagine Horizon kind of taking the Monster Hunter formula and applying it to its setting. Two sources have verified that the project is indeed real, with a third giving some brief details that it may feature a form of co-op. Customization is set to revolve around the different tribes established in the Horizon franchise. However, we have not been able to verify either that nor the details on whether or not the online would feature any sort of co-op or PvP. A Horizon multiplayer game, I think, would be more suited for a co-op experience where players gather together to hunt down these giant monster or creature or animal machines. Moving on, let's talk about Video Games Chronicle's report on this, where they corroborated multiplayer first article and report via their own sources. And scrolling down, they talk about all the things that multiplayer first claimed, which matches what VGC reported last year in terms of the multiplayer game that's in development. VGC did, in fact, talk about the potential of a Horizon multiplayer game based on job listings. This was back in 2021, and now rumors are lining up with such a project being in development. VGC adds that they understand that the studio has long intended to expand the Horizon series into the multiplayer space. Sources had previously told us that co-op was first planned for the original Horizon game, was ultimately scrapped so the development team could focus on other areas of the title, refining the single-player experience and making that the flagship, the marquee aspect of the game, which I think was a good plan. Zero Dawn concept art that leaked online in 2014, verified by VGC, even shows initial plans to have multiple players battle the game's huge mechanical beasts in a scenario similar to Capcom's Monster Hunter games. VGC concludes by pointing out that Sony itself had been keen to include co-op in the game's sequel, Forbidden West, but Guerrilla decided to save the feature for a future project, seemingly its own standalone project. So that's kind of all of the basic information you need to know surrounding the rumors, and some of my takes surrounding the fact that this project has been greenlit. Additional confirmation comes in the form of games industry insider Tom Henderson, who tweeted, "Wasn't expecting to be doing some digging on a Sunday night, but yeah, it seems like the Horizon Zero Dawn remake / remaster rumor is true." So given the high likelihood that one day we will see the Horizon Zero Dawn remake get announced by Sony, people have been responding, giving their takes, their reactions, and generally I've not been seeing a lot of positive sentiment surrounding it. So here we have one Twitter user who joked, "The Last of Us remake is the most unnecessary remake in gaming history." Horizon Zero Dawn essentially saying, "Hold my beer," and kind of coming in like the boys meme, like the deep comes in this specific episode. And this meme has already garnered over 55,000 upvotes. Plenty of people pointing out the myriad IPs and titles that could far more greatly benefit from a remake treatment. The NCS Master here tweeted, "Hey Sony, how about you remake any of these over Horizon Zero Dawn, presenting potential options like Sly Cooper, Wild Arms, Jak and Daxter, Ape Escape, Legend of Dragoon." Here we have content creator Mr. Matty Plays presenting options like Sly Cooper, Bloodborne. How are we getting a Horizon Zero Dawn remake first over a Bloodborne remaster and remake, which could use it far more given things like the performance, the frame rate, stuttering, and stuff like that? I'll take an official Bloodborne 60 FPS patch over an official Horizon Zero Dawn remake any day, personally. SOCOM, Resistance, what about those? Here's content creator Legacy Killa HD presenting his own potential options for games that could benefit far more from a remake treatment. Siphon Filter, SOCOM, Infamous, Resistance, like Cooper, Ico, Killzone, you name it. Folks from major news outlets such as IGN, like Mark Medina here, who is senior editorial producer at IGN, jokingly tweeted, "What Jim Ryan sees when he boots up the barely 5-year-old Horizon Zero Dawn in 4K 60 FPS. Again, the game got that patch to take advantage of PS5's power. Apparently, Jim Ryan sees it as an N64 game. People are wondering, is this just going to be the trend for Sony where they take 5-year-old AAA titles, first-party exclusives, remake them, quote-unquote, to some capacity in a way that isn't really necessary given that the game isn't really that old and still feels pretty good by modern standards, and just keep selling products like that for $70? Is that going to be just a new trend that they're going to set?" John Cartwright here tweeted, "Got a crazy take. I don't think remaking Horizon Zero Dawn is a good idea." John Cartwright is from outlet Good Vibes Gaming. Folks like Tony Polanco, who's also content creator and writer, he tweeted, "You already know Sony will charge $70 for the PS5 Horizon Zero Dawn, and that fanboys will say that's justified. The least Sony can do, if they're going to go this route, is to offer a very generous upgrade path for existing owners of Horizon Zero Dawn. Make it, a $20 at most upgrade path, something like that. It was what was absent from The Last of Us Part 1. I think that whole controversy would have been nowhere near as bad if Sony offered some kind of like $20 upgrade path for people who already own The Last of Us Remaster, or some way to make it cheaper for people who've already bought the game twice to play that game. And now with Horizon Zero Dawn, I'm wondering if they're going to go The Last of Us Part 1 route, or if they'll learn from the feedback that they got for Part 1 and implement some kind of upgrade path, or at the very least, ship the game at like a $50 price point instead of $70. Other content creators like Dom the Bomb just posted this image of Ellie crying, me seeing Horizon Zero Dawn getting a remake. And look, obviously for those who are not looking forward to a Horizon Zero Dawn remake, they can just choose not to buy it and let people who would buy something like this enjoy it. But again, the upsetting part is all of the money, manpower, and resources being poured into this project is money, manpower, and resources that isn't being poured into a more desired project. Some folks are just straight up baffled. Horizon Zero Dawn still looks better than most current gen games. I 100% agree with the sentiment, so what the fuck are they supposed to remaster? The voice acting? I have to wonder if they'd go as far as essentially redoing all of the dialogue but adding motion capture like they did with Forbidden West, so that you get that more cinematic looking presentation of dialogue exchanges between characters, or if they're gonna just take what's already there with Zero Dawn and kind of touch it up a bit by hand. Some folks like Paul Tassi from Forbes had a more neutral take. Yes, it does strike me as somewhat stupid to remake a gorgeous, barely 5-year-old game like Horizon Zero Dawn, but I don't care what Sony wants to sink money into, and you certainly are not forced to shell out the inevitable $70 for it. On some level, I agree that you can just kind of skip it if you don't want it, but I personally do care what Sony sinks its money into, because there's so many cool projects that they could pour that money into instead of the kind of unnecessary feeling Horizon Zero Dawn remake. Here's one more content creator contemplating the possibilities of a Horizon Zero Dawn PS5 remake version that could potentially include motion capture for conversations, combat enhancements, and machine improvements from Forbidden West. All of that stuff would be wild if they were to be fully implemented in this remake. Just don't make it full price, says Joe Raptor. So yeah, generally these are the kinds of sentiments that I'm seeing across the internet. I'm generally not seeing many people who are super thrilled about the prospect of a Horizon Zero Dawn remake over any other project, especially from dormant Sony IPs, being greenlit instead. I'm not saying that the remake itself is going to be bad. It's probably going to look and sound and play noticeably better than the original, but this is definitely a project that nobody asked for, and with the pricing model of The Last of Us Part 1 and how that charged a full $70, leaving a bad taste in some people's mouths, and with people expecting that the Horizon Zero Dawn remake might take a similar path, the optics just aren't great surrounding these rumors right now. But I guess in time we'll find out more about this project, how extensive this remake is, and what the pricing and business model surrounding this project is. If they can at least nail the business model where, again, they offer a reasonable upgrade path or ship the game at a reduced price that is not $70 or $60 even, then maybe it'll get some wiggle room. But even if it does get that wiggle room, the game's only 5 years old. I've never seen a remake come so soon. To me, this feels more like a business strategy of, ooh, we got this show coming out, let's take advantage of that. We'll see how all of this pans out. Until then, let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are about the prospects of a Horizon Zero Dawn remake for PlayStation 5. Would this be something you would look forward to personally, or are you kind of frustrated that this project even exists? Are you more sort of on the fence and it depends on the business and pricing model that they present? We'll see what happens. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.